What is everything that goes into making a garment? And can we create a piece of clothing entirely locally? I'm going to find out. Similar to the 100-mile diet or farm-to-table movement, I've challenged myself to apply this concept to clothing and see if we can create a garment from start to finish in Edmonton and Alberta. My name is Erin, and this is the ultimate slow fashion journey. We're going to explore the entire process from farm to closet. In the previous episode, we naturally dyed some yarn with both a local invasive weed, tansy, as well as onion skins. And now it's time for the yarn to be woven into fabric. I decided I wanted to work with a woven fabric very early in this project. There are two main types of fabric, woven and knit. And the easiest way to think about it is knit fabrics are connected together by loops, where woven fabrics are a grid with the yarns going over and under each other. You can easily identify knits because of the tiny V's in the fabric. And because of the loops, knits have built-in stretch. So any type of jersey fabric, t-shirt fabric, most activewear, swimwear, those are all knits. And of course, sweaters, which is what we usually think of when it comes to knitwear. Wovens, on the other hand, usually have very little stretch, unless there is some spandex or elastane blended in. Both knits and wovens are made commercially with very fast machines, but you can of course also hand knit garments or weave a more traditional way on a loom. Now, weaving is not a common skill. I personally have little knowledge of how to use a loom or how it works. So when I decided to do this local garment project, I was thrilled to discover Traceable Textiles, who not only weave blankets and textiles locally, but also, of course, as the name suggests, they know where all of their wools and dyes come from and source the majority of it in Alberta. So they were a perfect fit for this project.
I've been weaving probably for in earnest 15 years and have completed my master's in weaving from Olds College, and I really love it. The traceable part is about being connected, and that was what really spoke to me about the traceability of this yarn, is that I could actually go to the farm and not just see the fleeces, but actually meet the people that are involved in raising the sheep. And then I can also bring it to custom woolen mills and have it spun. So everything I could literally see. I had control over every step of the process. And that really spoke to me. I really liked that, being connected to place and people. Now, of course, traceability also means that there's some accountability. And that was the other part that I was really geared to, as far as creating a product that I knew exactly where it came from. Most of the breeds of sheep that are locally grown are grown for their meat. We were limited to exactly what kind of sheep breeds we could actually find. And as a result, we decided that with what was available, this was the kind of product we could create. So blankets kind of came as a result of what we had. And with that, then we could get a little bit more particular about what we're looking for and the qualities we're looking for. What makes a blanket a blanket? It's soft, it's durable, it's not gonna fall apart, it's warm, and it has a little bit of drape to it so that you can wrap yourself around it. So those were the kinds of qualities that we were looking for in the fleece. So really, we just started looking at, what's available around?
So with weaving, there are some key things to know. First is the warp and the weft, and also the basic weave patterns.
So the warps are the stationary threads, and the wefts are weft threads are the ones that you weave in and out to make the actual web. The warp is under tension. The thing is one piece of thread. You can usually break it relatively easily, but here we have there's 480 ends, I think, on there. So all of them working together is a lot stronger. It's strength in numbers and getting your tension even.
So there's 3 different weave structures in weaving. There's plain weave, which it's the strongest of structures. Then there's something called twill, which is what we use. Most of our jeans are made with a twill. We use it all the time, especially in clothing. And then there's the third structure, which is called sateen. We have sateen sheets, or you'll see them advertised. It's a different kind of weave structure that usually involves very fine yarn. Our yarn is thicker. And if we use plain weave, it's possible, but it gives you a much stiffer product. If we use twill, the twill allows, and the structure itself allows for a little more drape. So we're taking advantage of the structure of the weave in order to create more drape. As a weaver, I'm aware of those kinds of structures and how they will play out in the end product, which is really the most important thing, is be able to predict what the outcome is when you're weaving. There's a lot of investment in getting it set up. It's terrible when you pull it off the loom and you go, oh, that's not what I wanted. But we do have lots of ability with what we have to create different designs, as you can even see on this loom. Just by playing with color and weave structure, and just even within that weave structure, different patterns, we can create something quite remarkable. Sometimes it's better to be limited, because then with those limits, you can really expand and be far more creative.
There is a lot that goes into weaving, and not just the actual weaving part, but also getting everything planned, prepared, and set up. For my project, because I was getting custom woven fabric, I needed to figure out exactly how the fabric would look and fit the fabric to my pattern pieces, instead of the opposite, which is normally the process when sewing a garment. But the planning and the layout took so much work because there couldn't be mistakes with the plan. I had to first finalize my pattern pieces and then lay them all out and figure out a way to cut them so that the stripes would match on the seams when they were sewn together. I needed to create a plan of exactly the measurements where the color changes needed to be for my pattern pieces. And then we also needed to account for and leave room for shrinkage, because there's both shrinkage when you take the fabric off the loom, and then shrinkage again with the final wash and finishing. So I went back and forth with Shannon and Kylie until we had a final plan.
This is one of those, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail situations where you need to know what you're doing. There is a ton of math involved because you need to figure out, like, okay, if I'm doing this pattern, how much of each color do I need? What length do I need? How much shrinkage do I have? All that stuff has to be figured out ahead of time. And then after that, you make the warp. We use the warping mill. And this is usually done in one big continuous loop, back and forth, until we have our 480 ends. After that, we put it through the heddles, which are the parts that decide which ones go up and down to create the pattern. And then it goes through the reed, which separates it all out nice and evenly. And then we do what's called beaming it on, so then we roll it on to the back and try and keep them all under the same tension. Then it's tied on to the front beam so that it all stays nice and even under tension. And then you start doing the actual weaving. For a floor loom, they're connected to treadles. The heddles and the shafts are tied onto the treadles, so if you step on one, a certain pattern will go up. You send the shuttle through, so some will be up, some will be down, send the shuttle through, and then when that closes, that gives you your woven in and out. Twill, which is what we have right now, is 2 and 2. So the first time will be threads 1 and 2 are up, then the next one is 2 and 3, 3 and 4, then 4 and 1. So it creates this diagonal line going up. After it's done, we take it off and finish it. So we tie knots on the edges of all our blankets for the tassels. And then we do what's called dry finishing, which is going over it, fixing any airs or any loose ends. So for example, where I've changed colors, there's all those little bits sticking out that need to be trimmed. Then it gets washed and then go over it again because something shows up after it gets washed all the time. And then you iron it. Before you wash it, it's called a web because it is actually quite loose. And if you wanted, you could stick your finger through it. But then after it's done, especially because it's woolen, that yarn all plumps up and loosens a little bit. And those fibers that are sticking out will connect to each other. And then you actually have a finished piece of fabric.
In Canada, we're generally losing skills like weaving and the knowledge and appreciation for handmade products and handwoven textiles. And I'm also included in that. Before going on this whole local garment journey, I didn't know much about weaving. And it's very easy to just assume that fast machines, which can produce meters of fabric in just minutes, and cheaper textiles are progress and somehow better. But faster and cheaper isn't always better. There's a balance, and it would be such a shame to lose these textile skills and knowledge and appreciation for them because there is something very special about slow handmade goods.
The thing that really brings me joy is how it feels to feel something handwoven. Any craft, if you have a true craftsman, when you pick it up and hold it, you can feel the energy in it. You can feel the hand from the creator, from the craftsman in that piece. And that's something that I just love so much about handwovens, is that you really get a connection. And that is something that is even more so with a blanket, because blankets are meant to be wrapped in. They feel special. When I think of slow, I think of thoughtfulness. Everything slows down, so you carefully consider every part of the process. As a craftsperson, it's very important to be able to anticipate all of those things that will make something that much better, because you understand the materials, you understand how to weave it, how to finish it is really important. All of those details that go into the process really make it a special piece at the end. And then it's a fine finished, craft finished piece. Making isn't such a bad thing anymore, and handmade is now something that's extraordinary because you can't get it at a store. It takes a lot of skill. There's many steps involved, and even just to get good at doing it requires a lot of time. How it's so seasonal, we have to go and skirt when the fleeces are sheared. We have to wait 6 months for our yarn to be done. So everything, is a very slow and methodical process that requires a lot of patience and waiting. And people, we just don't know that anymore. We just don't see how things are made.
Yeah, like that bag that I was talking about that I started with raw fleece to finished bag. I figured easily 100 hours into it. If you look at minimum wage, that bag is worth like about $1,500.
Yeah.
And yes, people will pay that for like higher brands, but most of those are not paying their workers a living wage, right? Yeah, a lot of it is education, and we are so used to getting things made with essentially slave labor.
Out of sight, out of mind. And then we don't have to feel guilty about it. So as long as we don't see it's happening, as long as we can as long as there's some willful blindness involved, we can easily excuse it. And we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it, because it's just how our world is working right now.
With this project, one of the many things I've realized and learned more about is just how little traceability there actually is, and how opaque most supply chains and sourcing are, and often companies can't even fully trace their own products.
The actual connection to the land and to the place that it comes from, I think, is really a lovely thought. And I think that's part of why it's so important for us to do what we're doing here is that we really have this opportunity kind of to make something out of nothing. Something that's really normally would be discarded and tossed aside because it's not really feasible in this workaday world. And also, it's from here. It gives you place. We get to meet the farmers.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's something to be said about having that connection.
The concept of provenance has come up frequently when meeting with makers and people involved in this project. It's quite rare and special to have something completely from here. The fiber and dyes came from this land and this soil, and it was made with the skills and by the hands in this community. And that is something that will always make this garment so special. My handwoven fabric from Traceable Textiles turned out beautifully. It has a gorgeous drape and subtle luster from the fin wool, and all the measurements that we carefully planned and calculated thankfully worked out. So the next step that is incredibly daunting and I'm quite nervous about, I need to cut it up.